Welcome back, everybody. Jeff here, and the hype is extremely intense right now because Weird has just recently announced Malifaux 4th Edition. And they were kind enough to invite me along to help communicate some of the exciting news to you, so I want to send a huge thank you to the team at Weird for putting this together. I love when they get the community involved in some of the cool stuff that they're doing. So if you didn't catch the Danger Planets video yesterday talking about some of the models that are leaving the range for Malifaux, then definitely be sure to go check that out, because this video is going to kind of lead on from that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the keyword shakeups and some of the things that are going to be moving around. And on top of that, I'm going to show you a little sneak peek of some of the new stuff that's coming to a handful of the keywords, so be sure to stick around for that. But before we get into all that, the possibly most exciting bit of news that I want to talk about here has to do with Mr. Cornelius Bass. Hey, have you ever found yourself in a strange, unusual world, being conscripted into a horrible authoritarian state to do their bidding? And while you're doing their bidding, did you ever get mixed up with another horrible authoritarian organization that abuses and exploits people, and you ended up kind of doing their bidding as well? Well, that's the situation that Cornelius Bass has found himself in Malifaux. And the good news is that he's actually throwing off the shackles from both of those organizations, the Guild and the Explorer Society, and he is going to be joining up with the Arcanists. That's right, the only master that is going to be full-on changing factions in 4th edition Malifaux is Cornelius Bass, and he is going from Explorers and Guild to the Arcanists. What a glow-up. This is really exciting stuff for me personally because I'm an Arcanist player, and you know that I hate the Guild. They're the worst, and Bass never really felt right working for the Guild anyway. He never wanted to do it himself, and now he is freeing himself, and he's going to be joining the fight against the tyranny of the Guild. And we get a little sneak peek here of what the page layouts are going to look like for Bass in the upcoming book. And this is really cool for a couple of different reasons. First of all, you'll obviously notice that Bass 1 is actually going to get a rework here. He's got some new art, and theoretically, we're going to be getting a new model to go along with that. And the next thing you might notice is that there's a lot of text here. So this is a little bit of the background story. And if you're not familiar with the way they usually do it with Malifaux, when the books come out, there's usually a little blurb that comes along with each character that kind of explains a little bit about their backstory. And usually that's like 3 paragraphs or so. And this is obviously considerably more than what we usually get. So that's really exciting. And this is going to tell us a little bit about the information that we already knew about Bass, about how he came to Malifaux because his daughter got in trouble with some corrupt legal officials in the United States. And since he's been working for the Guild and doing some odd jobs for the Explorer Society, he hasn't really been comfortable in those situations. And it all kind of comes to a head when he is confronted by a situation where they're telling him to fire on protesters. He says no, he is actually a man who has a sense of morality, unlike the rest of the organizations that he works for. And that's a really dangerous move for him because he is kind of in Malifaux under the protection of the Guild with the understanding that he's going to be working for them. So disobeying them is really a big risk. But as luck would have it, Miss Tony Ironsides, the hopefully future Queen of Malifaux, and one of the only other good characters in the story, arguably, actually saw him disobey these orders, and that was something that really impressed her. So she actually approached Mr. Bass and made a deal with him where he would join up with their organization and help them fight the good fight. Now, my bingo card for 4th edition Malifaux did not have a Bass Ironsides team up on it, but man, I'm really excited to see where this goes, and I hope that we get a whole story to kind of develop that background a little bit more. Typically, we get some pretty significant stories for a lot of the major shakeups in the alignment of the characters when new editions come out, so I'm really looking forward to that. We can see a little blurred out version of a couple of the cards here, and there's not really a lot that we can make out, but it is pretty cool because they do look quite different than the cards for 3rd edition Malifaux. They look pretty snazzy, and the graphic design looks pretty awesome. So another thing to look forward to seeing in the future. Now, we're going to get into some of the keyword changes here, and you probably know from some of the articles that Weird has been posting that there has definitely been a decision made to reduce the number of sort of dual faction / dual keyword models in the game overall. And before we get into it, I just kind of want to touch on that really quick. So there's 2 things that you should consider when you think about that. One is that this is a really good way to reduce the overall bloat of the game. For every model that takes up a slot in 2 different keywords, that's additional complexity that gets added to the game without there being additional models. So reducing the instances of those types of things actually opens up some new slots and kind of gives the game the ability to breathe and kind of expand a little bit more without feeling super, super bloated. The other thing that I want you to consider, and this is probably even more exciting, is that every time they eliminate a dual faction or a dual keyword model, that means that there's another slot open, so there could be new stuff coming. So if you go through this list and you think to yourself, wow, a lot of my favorite things got removed from the game, just remember that that means there's an opportunity for more cool stuff to come to the game that you'll be able to use and take advantage of. And another thing to kind of consider is that a lot of these things are being done for lore reasons. So the way that Weird usually handles the game is that the lore and the story kind of takes precedent, and whatever is going on in the lore and the story then gets reflected in the game. So bear that in mind as well. And another important thing to note here is that all of the things that I'm about to tell you are, of course, subject to change. So some of the stuff might be slightly different when the stuff actually launches around Gen Con. So as I've said, a lot of models that used to be dual keyword are going to be getting reduced down to only a single keyword. But to get right into it, let's talk about Ashes of Malifaux, which is the most recent expansion for Malifaux that notably included a ton of models that were dual keyword. Pretty much everything was dual keyword. The overwhelming majority of models from Ashes of Malifaux are going to stay in the crews that they were in before, so you don't have to worry so much about those. The only exceptions are the Shadowlark and the Blackbird are going to lose Witness, and they are going to just stay in Performer. And Carrie Zotico and the Ferryman are going to stay in Tormented, but they are going to lose Irami. Everything else is going to stay in the crews that it was already in from Ashes of Malifaux, so if you have any recent releases that are in multiple keywords, you don't have to worry about those. Now, rewinding a little bit through time, if we go back to Malifaux Burns, where we got the releases of the new title masters, as well as models that were shared between two different masters, almost all of those models are going to become totems for one or the other of the masters. And as a result of that, they are going to lose their second keyword. And the ones that are not going to become a totem are going to just stay regular models in only one of the keywords that they used to be in before. So they are all going to be losing their second keyword. Now, most other models that were available in the game that had two keywords are going to be losing one or the other of those keywords. Everybody is kind of drawing a line in the sand and picking an allegiance, but there are a handful of exceptions to that. Some models will still be a dual keyword. Now, in addition to all of that, there are going to be a handful of models that are just going to outright change keyword in this edition. And this is the exciting bit for me because I want to know what the story reasons are for people just full-on jumping allegiances along the lines of Bass that we talked about earlier. So the first thing to note on this subject is that the keywords that used to be associated with Dead Man's Hand Masters are going to be eliminated. Puppet is still kind of in the game, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And in some cases, the models that used to be associated with those keywords are going to be folded into other keywords. So to kick it off, let's talk about Wildfire. Wildfire is actually going to be picking up the Steam Arachnid, the Mech Arachnid, and the Carthropod, which is the new name for the Scorpius. In addition to all of that, Howard Langston is actually going to be switching from MNSU to Wildfire. It seems like he decided to pick the wrong side of the Ironsides and Karis conflict, but I'll try not to be too mad at him. But overall, it looks like Karis is going to be kind of following in her mentor's footsteps and taking over a bunch of the little robots that Ramos used to deal with. Interesting. Now, that leaves the MNSU keyword a little bit light, so let's go over to Joss, who is actually going to be joining as an MNSU member. Now, this is interesting because he was also kind of a Ramos loyalist, but it seems like he has also chosen a side, and unlike Howard Langston, he's chosen the right side. Going down the list here, the Wanyudo is going to be part of Last Blossom, which it kind of already was an honorary member of Lost Blossom, but it is not going to be in Revenant anymore. It's just going to be hanging out with Misaki. Minako Rei and the Katashiro are actually going to be coming out of Last Blossom, and they're just going to become Ten Thunder's versatile models. The Obsidian Statue and the Terracotta Warrior are actually going to become Ancestor models, so they're going to be hanging out with Yan Lo. And with Mortuary going away, which was Nicodem's old keyword, the Gravedigger and Mortimer are actually going to just become general versatile models. So not a big change, really. Jessie Halliday is actually going to be coming out of McCabe's crew, and she's just going to become an Explorer Society versatile, which is a little bit of a surprise for me, but I'll be curious to find out what happens. Maybe they have a little breakup in the lore. I'll be excited to see how that goes. And finally, the Gups, the Spawn Mother, the Silurids, and the Flying Piglets are all going to become just Bayou versatile. So they're all losing a couple keywords there. So Ramos and Nicodem's keywords are gone. Lilith kind of always shared a keyword with Nikima, so that's kind of staying the same. And Puppet is actually going to become a characteristic. It is no longer a keyword. So it could potentially still have some implications in the mechanics of the game, but there's not really going to be any like crews that are revolving around Puppet like they used to be. So hopefully that wasn't too painful. I think it's a lot of exciting changes, and I'm really curious to see what the reasoning is for some of this stuff in the lore and how some of these changes got made. But on the other side, it also means that if you lost something, you could be getting something new. So let's talk about some of the new stuff that's coming to the game. Now, I don't have a ton of information about any of this stuff. We pretty much just have names and keywords, but we can do a little bit of speculating, and everybody can kind of get down in the comments and let me know what you think some of this stuff might actually be. So to kick it off, December is going to get a new model called Mara, And Cedra is actually going to change up the way that it works a little bit. So it used to be that Cedra could transform into Sightless Snow, but now the way it's going to work is there's going to be two versions of Cedra. One is called Cedra the White Death, and one is called Cedra Sightless Snow. Now, I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe we're going to get two different varieties of Cedra and what Cedra can transform into. I don't know why it would be able to transform into a different form. Or maybe the White Death is going to be a version of Cedra that doesn't transform. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. The Frontier keyword is going to have a new version of Bernadette called Bernadette Bravo, and she's going to be the one that goes with the title version of Bass, which is pretty cool because I'm looking forward to getting another model of her. She's really awesome. The MNSU is having their kind of core line infantry dudes getting replaced by the Union Journeymen. Witness is going to get a brand new model that will be the totem for the title version of Damien. The Hungering Darkness is going to get a new version of himself, which is going to be the title version's totem. And I'm kind of excited to see what that looks like because we have a ton of models for the Hungering Darkness. So maybe we're getting another new one. The Monk keyword is going to be getting a new totem for title Shenlong, and it's going to be called Mulong. And I'm hoping that it's going to have a fire dragon-y kind of vibe to it because the Dawn Serpent's going to be an official proxy for it. And of course, we know that Shenlong is currently possessed by the dragon, so that's pretty cool. Revenant is also going to get a new totem for Riva, and Karai will be getting a new version of Akiria, which is going to be the totem for title Karai. And the Arami keyword is also going to be getting a new model called a Kuchisaki Ono. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but if you look it up, this is actually a creature from Japanese folklore, and it's a sort of evil spirit of a woman who covers her face with a mask and carries around a pair of scissors. So not only is that extremely on point for Malifaux, but it's extremely on point for Karai and her crew. I love it. I'm really excited to see what this is going to look like. The Bandit keyword is going to get a model called Ashen Echo, and presumably this is going to kind of tie in with what he's been up to with all of his Burning Man exploits and things like that, but we'll have to wait and see what that's going to look like as well. The Cavalier keyword is getting a bunch of new toys. So there's going to be a model called Smokestack, a model called Maria, and a model called Ghost of the Shell. The Elite keyword is going to get a new model called Jane Doe, and I think that's definitely on point because their whole thing kind of revolves around anonymity and being secret agents and stuff like that. So it'll be cool to see a kind of female secret agent get added to that roster. The Marshal keyword is getting a model called the Repurposed Monstrosity, and I'm curious what this is going to look like. I wonder if they're going to have some sort of like undead creature that they're recruiting or forcing to work for them in some horrible way. I think that would go along really well with the whole theme of most of the guild crews where they're a little hypocritical and they kind of use some of the powers or the abilities of the things that they're supposed to be opposing or fighting. The Witch Hunter keyword is getting a new model called Casimir. And the Department of Ungentlemanly Affairs is getting a new version of Mr. Mordrake to be the totem for the title version of Ivan. The Syndicate keyword is going to get a new totem called a Brass Bull, and I'm really excited to see what that looks like because we kind of already have a Brass Bull in the Arcane Emissary, and this kind of goes along with this whole idea that Anya's just kind of biting off the Arcanist, but we'll see what that looks like. Nikima's keyword is going to get a new model called a Corrupt Crony, which is a little bit weird because that sounds like a guild thing, but I guess the Nephilim can have them too. As we all know from the article earlier this week, the Dreamer crew is going to get a new version of Lord Chompy Bits, and I think Lord Chompy Bits is probably the model that has the most different versions. Maybe Teddy, I'm not sure, but looks like we're getting another Lord Chompy Bits for title Dreamer. The Savage keyword is getting a new totem called Strix, and if you look up what a Strix is in mythology, it's kind of a bad omen that comes in the form of a bird, so that'll be kind of interesting to see in that crew. My speculation is that this is probably the bird that we saw in the recent trailer that dropped last week, but I don't actually know if that's true or not, so take it with a grain of salt. And last but not least, we have Swamp Fiend, where Zoraida will be getting a new totem for her title version as well. Now, presumably, this is just the first wave of releases that are going to be coming with 4th edition Malifaux, so there's probably a whole lot more in store. But I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the things that we're going to get moved around just in case you were looking to make any purchases in the near future and get you a little bit excited about some of the cool stuff that's coming up. I'm really excited about 4th edition Malifaux, and keep your eye out because, of course, Weird has their Easter sale coming up very soon. Don't forget to use the affiliate link, which will be in the description below, so that you can support the channel while you make your purchases through them. There's a whole bunch more of M4 coverage coming up, both from me as well as other content creators. So keep an eye on the Weird landing page for M4E so that you can stay up to date with all that stuff. Now get down in the comments below and let me know what you think of all of that information. I know it was a lot to take in, but let me know which of the new models you're the most excited about, and let me know why you think some of the existing models are going to be switching keyword in the way that they are. I love to hear people's pet theories on how the lore is going to get shaped, and I was really excited to find out that we're going to be getting faction books for all of the factions for 4th edition, which means we're going to be getting a ton of lore coming in the very near future. Super duper exciting. I have lots of stuff planned, including coverage of the lore and interviews with the designers of M4, so you won't want to miss any of that stuff. Make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out all the other important links below, including the Patreon, where you can support the channel directly, and get a whole bunch of different benefits, including a shout out at the end of the videos. And on that note, I want to send a huge thank you to the extremely cool kids tier on Patreon, the Steambound Scoundrels, Dogmatized, Devin, Spanner Rider, Rob Younce, and Dynat. And thanks for watching.